So, sorry. So thank you, Zach, and thanks everyone for coming. It's my favorite time of the year, the Hour of Code Week, Computer Science Education Week. So a little bit about myself and my background. So I was born in Israel in '82, and both my parents actually are software engineers. So me and my young brother, the other CodeMonkey co-founder, started coding at a very young age, naturally. We were growing up with the first Apple computers at home. I think by the age of 10, we were creating our own computer games for fun. So that was my background in computer science, my entry into the coding world. Then when I was 19, I started volunteering in education, and I started my own coding courses for children. The year was 2001. So that's when I got into my first taste of education. And that's also when the first inspiration for CodeMonkey came from those classes that I created, my lesson plans that I created little games for the lessons, computer games that my students had to progress through the game by writing code. And those games are very, very basic, like no graphics at all, very basic graphic. But that was the first inspiration for CodeMonkey.
Well, not to give away your age, Jonathan, but when you started, not so long ago, but a little bit time ago. Now, thankfully we're at a place globally where it's more accepted for children to code and to teach coding, whether you're in the United States, Canada, India, Australia, wherever you may be, and wherever all these people who are joining us on this webinar. Why did you think to teach coding? Did you know it was important back then? Is it something that I know it's something that you did, but why did you feel that it was important to teach coding, and why not math or other subjects?
It's a good question. I started coding in a similar course, like when I was 9. I think my mother signed me up for a coding summer class. So I knew from my experience that it's easy to start coding early, and that it could be a lot of fun. It's a fun skill to have. And I was already working as a coder at the time. I started during my last year in high school, having a part-time job in software development. It was, very lucrative for a 17-year-old kid. And I just thought, I was working back then in with children from underserved communities, like immigrant families in Israel. And I just thought, this is a great skill I could give those children that I'm working with as an enabler for social mobility. And it actually worked. Like they learned very quickly, and some of them later chose to this as a career path. That was the thinking.
Wow, really, really interesting. So before we jump into sort of that answer and then go into the start of CodeMonkey and how that began, you were a software developer. You still have those skill sets. What pushed you towards the education world? You could have been in financial, you could have been a software developer in sports, and especially as we know, there's so many ways that the children today, as they learn as adults, can get into different industries. What about education made you why did you come into this industry of all other industries when you had the skill sets to do so?
Good question. So I think I wasn't planning to, like I said, the house I grew up in was all around software and tech and entrepreneurship, and nobody was talking about education as an occupation where I grew up. But then I sort of stumbled upon the world of education in Israel. When you finish high school, you have to go to the army, or either you go to the army or you do social volunteering in hospitals or education in underserved communities. So I did that. And it's really hard once you started working in education, working with children, connecting with them, spending time with them, affecting their lives. It's really hard to go back to like a plain office job. I think like you really want to continue having this exciting, I don't know, important influence on others people's lives, and also just having this type of like special, unique challenge of finding ways of giving skills to young people.
Wow. Yeah, and it's very commendable. One of the things which we bring up a lot is the skill of coding, being able to code, and software development is, as you mentioned, can be quite a lucrative career. You can really get great jobs in so many different places, and to take the time and sacrifice, whether not to go into full details, but the sacrifice and going to education is quite commendable, and it's paid off given that CodeMonkey has grown all over the world. So you mentioned how you taught young students after high school, young children, coding. So maybe you could elaborate on that and talk a little bit about how that led to starting CodeMonkey and sort of that journey, and all the different parts of it, because I know there's a lot there. So whatever you feel is great for the kids here and teachers to learn.
So there was a journey, and I guess I'll start with the end. Like the final conclusion from the journey is that timing is everything, I guess. Because after I started those courses, the year was 2001, and I wanted to create something like CodeMonkey right after that, like in 2002. But I ended up starting CodeMonkey successfully only 12 years later, or 13 years later, in 2014. And in between, I had to sort of wait for the opportunity to mature, I guess. So I went to university, I got my computer science degree. I started CodeMonkey as like an academic project. But that wasn't, I think, a good platform for from Israel to reach a large scale and to create like a good enough product. So I had to wait to graduate from university, and then I tried to start CodeMonkey for the first time in 2007 with the third CodeMonkey founder, Ishai. But it was just too early. Like teaching kids to code wasn't a big thing back then. Education technologies wasn't a big thing. Like no angel investors, VC, like venture capital firms, nobody wanted to invest in educational technology, and specifically in technology for teaching kids to code. Like everyone said, wow, I would love to have such a product for my kids, but this is not a good business to invest in because not a lot of people would want to buy that, like just like a small niche of maybe parents who are themselves into computer science and things like that. So we failed back then in 2007, and only in 2013 an edtech incubator was started in Israel, because edtech became a thing. Educational technology became a thing in the venture capital community, and specifically teaching kids to code became a huge trend back then. The big nonprofit Code.org, responsible for the Hour of Code Week, Computer Science Education Week, was founded by an I think Microsoft executive, was funded by Google and Microsoft and all those. For them, it was simply because they were struggling with the shortage in software developers. So they wanted to increase awareness to the importance of teaching computer science in school. So then when we started CodeMonkey in 2014, success came very quickly. I think you're muted. At least I don't hear you.
Thank you. I guess, you touched on some of this, but maybe you could talk a bit about some of the challenges you faced in terms of starting CodeMonkey, not just in terms of the market, but you have that background, you were coding, you were building something, you were from Israel, you're trying to grow this. Like, talk about it's important for teachers and students to learn about, you know, now we're at a different place. You have millions of kids using it and schools, and that's fantastic. But it wasn't always like that right at the beginning. That's for sure. What were some of those challenges you overcome? How did you maintain that ability to, overcome those challenges as opposed to just saying, you know what, I could just go work for a company. Sort of those two things. What were challenges, and then what enabled you to ensure that those challenges were overcome?
Yeah. So that's a big question. I guess when starting a startup company, I heard once that they've done a research one. It says like a caterpillar that has many different legs, but all the legs have to take steps at the same time, more or less. So like first we created like a prototype of the product. And that was fairly simple, like creating a very small game that children liked and and actually learned to code while playing it. So that was the fun part, and the easy part, so to speak, because we got accepted into this incubator. We received like a small investment from the incubator. We kept our jobs, like part-time jobs, and the three co-founders, we were all coders ourselves, so we just created the game ourselves. Tried it in classrooms, in schools, in Israel. That was the easy part. The hard part, I guess, is getting noticed by potential users, teachers, potential partners, resellers, schools, governments, and getting the attention of investors. Because beyond just creating a small prototype, coding it yourself, everything else costs a lot of money, like marketing, sales, all of that. So yeah, it was really just like always finding like the next step. I remember, for example, the first large exposure that we received from users, from teachers and students and families, was through the Computer Science Education Week, the Hour of Code. We shared this prototype that we had with code.org, the foundation running the Hour of Code, and they put it on their website. And I remember around this time of the year, 8 years ago, we just like overnight received like millions of users. Yeah, so that was one like jumping board for the exposure part. And we had similar stories on how like one investor led to the next investor, a larger investor, then a strategic investor that also played as a distributor in a certain market, and so on. So it's always about finding the next step in each one of those challenges that you're trying to coordinate, like exposure, marketing, sales, funding, and of course product development.
Right. And just because I have a question right here, which I think ties nicely in it, talked about challenges and then overcoming those. And you mentioned code.org and having millions of users due to the Hour of Code Week. That's one example. Can you maybe share a specific moment since 2014 with CodeMonkey that was one of like the very happy moments in your startup process, and even now? So just something that all these kids, everyone goes, teachers, they work so hard, they have their own challenges, and then they come out with like a great test that they studied on. So like, what is your example of that?
Of a happy moment?
Yeah.
Well, that night when we received like millions of
Right.
like
So that's a good example.
that was an amazing week. I remember that we almost didn't get any sleep that week. We were busy maintaining the server so that it doesn't crash. We weren't expecting this huge traffic of users. That was one. Other interesting moments. Actually, I remember a specific meeting with, we had like an angel investor putting a small amount of money, a guy from Israel who's also a tech entrepreneur. And he told me, I have a visitor from Japan. He's my distributor for my startup company. He was creating like long range Wi-Fi routers. He said, my distributor in Japan is now in Israel. I told him about your company. I think you should meet him.
Right.
And we sat down in a beach bar in Tel Aviv. I remember it was midday. And I told him about CodeMonkey, and like just interrupted me like in the middle of my pitch, banged his glass of beer on the table and said, I want in. I wanna be the exclusive distributor in Japan, and I want to invest. I don't care about the terms. Like when you're fundraising, let me know. I'll be the first investor in the next round. So I remember that was a happy moment.
Well, it is. That's great. That's great to hear. It is unbelievable. Myself working at CodeMonkey, just seeing the global reach and how many places we've traveled to and how many times we see pictures. Right now, for those of you who don't know, there's a contest for those who are using Hour of Code. You could take a picture of your children using it and tweet CodeMonkey. We're giving away a free home license as well as a gift card for the best picture for those who are enjoying CodeMonkey. So definitely, maybe Angie can put that in the end, or when we'll send it as a follow-up. Jonathan, going to take a break from some of my questions, because in the Q&A we've had a couple, and it seems like a good place to answer those. So one person asked about, would you please give your thoughts on the quickest approach to learn how to code? So I would say maybe not quickest, but what's a great way to learn code? And obviously you'll probably talk about CodeMonkey and why CodeMonkey is a great way to learn how to code.
Yeah. So actually I have one important like nuance to address whenever I get asked that question. I remember before starting CodeMonkey successfully, between the first failed attempt and the second successful attempt, I was working as a software developer. And then like a lot of people were looking to transition from other careers into software development. It was the 2004, like the tech boom, one of the tech booms. And then so you had all those ads online telling you, like targeting grown-ups, saying learn to code in 7 days, learn to code in 24 hours, learn to code, become a software developer in 1 month. And then I remember reading an article saying like learn to code in like 14 years, like the truth about how long it takes to really become a decent software developer. And they were talking about like the good software developer, they started early, and it really takes you to, with any I guess skill or job craft, like to become really good at something, to become employable and to become like good at what you do, it takes years. So I guess I will change the question a little bit. Is what is the quickest way to get like an initial successful taste of coding, like an exposure to programmatic thinking? And I think the best way to do that is actually through the Hour of Code Week and all of those different small activities that use a gamified way, short gamified course to give young children really a taste of what coding is. And it can be using a real programming language like you do on some of the CodeMonkey Hour of Code activities, or it can be just those Scratch style building blocks, drag and drop things. Actually, my daughter is now 5, so I started doing that with her using CodeMonkey Junior. Yeah, I think it's not a coincidence that those games and the Hour of Code Week became very popular, because I think it's a great way to get quickly into coding, not to become a coder quickly, but to get into coding.
Yeah, that's a great difference. Someone, and I guess using CodeMonkey that has all those aspects as gamified coding and a really just very simple way to jump into coding, maybe not becoming the coder in the quickest way. Again, that's not we're trying to get them in and really get them those basic skills. So what's special about CodeMonkey in terms of whether it is that jumping in, the being ease of it, or actually after being in CodeMonkey for X amount of years and using it for a while, you come out with what? So sort of the going and what makes CodeMonkey different from maybe other programs, not in specific where our Code Week, all the coding companies are doing great work.
I think, well, really today there are so many excellent products for teaching kids to code, and each one is a bit different, but I wouldn't say that CodeMonkey like has something unique that no other products have. But I will say that for CodeMonkey, I think the priority was always the top priority was creating an engaging experience for the learners, for the young students, and that was achieved through many different aspects of the product. It's always crucial for us to keep the courses very intuitive and self-paced, so that students can learn on their own at their own pace. To keep the courses, to create the game a very like full-blown game experience, like not a gamified course, but an actual game. And this doesn't mean that it needs to be like a very fancy game in a 3D world with a lot of visual effects and noises and sound. On the contrary, the simpler the game is, there was a research on that recently in Israel. The simpler the game is, the better the learning outcomes are, but the game does need to be a full-blown game. Like it needs to be, like there need to be characters, there need to be a plot. The kids need to be like, they need to get like sort of immersed in this game world. So it was the intuitiveness, the full-blown game experience, and then of course the pedagogy. This is the most important thing when creating educational content. So it's really like being mindful of a lot of and many like small details, and planning how you break the complex concept into simpler concept, and creating this sequence where you build the understanding of each concept, like one on top of the other.
Wow, it's great. And I highly suggest, I'm sure many of you who are attending this webinar have already tried CodeMonkey. If not, definitely go on codemonkey.com to register for a free trial. It's great. So one more question before I get back into my list of questions, Jonathan. Someone asked, may I know why it's called CodeMonkey and the significance of its name?
Yeah, the name was very significant. It's a catchy name, and also a catchy logo, I think. So we sort of borrowed the term CodeMonkey. It's not a term that we created. It was an existing term in the tech world. It's sort of like a funny derogatory term for the junior coders on each software development team, like the most junior coders, you refer to them like as an internal joke as code monkeys. And whenever you break a large software project into many small pieces, you give the simpler task to the code monkeys, like to the junior coders. So it's actually a derogatory term, but nobody outside the tech world knows it. So we thought we could just use it as create a character, a monkey character. And that was actually my brother Ido, the CTO, the other co-founder of CodeMonkey. He came up with the name and the game concept of monkey collecting bananas.
Wow. Yeah, it's exciting. And it's led to, you talked to Brett at the beginning about getting noticed, right? You knew you created a great program, but to get noticed is sometimes hard and requires more than just having a great product. It also requires the marketing and how you show. So definitely that's been important.
Right. I remember, by the way, this ties to your earlier question about a happy moment. So when I moved from Tel Aviv to New York, when CodeMonkey reached that stage where it was time to move to the United States and start the US office. So I was getting a lot of reaction in New York, like when I was telling people, like just visiting a doctor or whatever, what are you doing? Oh, I started CodeMonkey, and say, yeah, CodeMonkey, I think I heard of it. I think I know it. And often I was thinking, there's no way this person really knows CodeMonkey, but I know the term sounds familiar. So it made us sort of being perceived as bigger than we really were at the time.
Right. Right. That is, it's pretty amazing. Okay. So, we've talked about a number of items here about what was, how you, your background and CodeMonkey's background. So I want to talk a little bit, CodeMonkey started, 9 years ago. What has changed and what has remained the same? Whether it's, you could talk about the platform, you could talk about maybe the company itself, but there's it's like it's a company, but it's a live company, and there's things going
Yeah.
on. So what has changed and what has remained the same?
So what remained the same is, our day-to-day of creating game-based coding courses for children. And we pretty much do it the same way that we did it back then. We create like a small initial version of a course. We try it with children. We write down, feedback from the user testing. Then we create a full version of the course, release it, get feedbacks from students, teacher, parents, improve the course. This hasn't changed, and we do it through pedagogical experts, software developers, animators, musicians. So this stayed the same, and I'm glad it did. This is my favorite part of our work, creating the courses and using them with children, getting the feedback and improving the courses. What did change is the business side. So back then, as a startup company, your main concern is reaching significant success milestones that would allow fundraising additional money from investor before you run out of the money that you raised previously. And this was, I'm glad we're beyond that stage, because this is pretty nerve-wracking, and it wears you out, like this sort of chase, always chasing after more investments before the money runs out. And now that the company is well established and profitable, so the business challenge is something I enjoy way more than the business challenge in the startup stage. And it's just the challenge of sort of optimizing the business, steadily growing it, becoming better at planning, making business plan, executing business plans, becoming better at hiring the right people, building the accurate teams, managing them better. So it's really now about sort of optimizing the as like sort of business professionals.
Right. Yeah, that's
The right partners, as you know, Zach, right, is something
yeah.
that we really became better in,
Yeah.
right partners in each country. And
Yeah, it's also interesting to really see so many students who get to benefit from the program, and that focus and keeping to the idea of, from the beginning we were making gamified, engaging coding courses for kids, and we are still doing that. And so that's very hard to continue to do. And but I can from my own experience, it's true what's happening. So just looking a little bit to the future, we've, for those who don't know, and I highly suggest you all try out, we've launched 2 new courses in digital literacy. These are our first non-coding courses. We have one on digital use and digital citizenship. We launched them this year a few months ago, and they're being highly used. They're beloved. They're a new course, but it's something that's completely different that we've done, in the sense that they're not coding. They're gamified learning programs, but not coding. So where do you see CodeMonkey in 5 years? Knowing, we've launched these two courses, but any type of vision or anything, whether it's the courses or, anything like that that you could speak on would be great.
So I see CodeMonkey continue to grow on the path that we chose the recent few years of sort of transitioning from being a courses company, like specific courses, coding courses, to becoming a curriculum provider. And that means covering entire computer science curriculum according to different standards in different parts of the world. So that's not only coding, like you said, it can include other subjects in computer science, and to cover the entire pathway from kindergarten to 8th grade. And also to provide for all the different needs in required for implementing computer science curriculum. So that's not only the coding courses for the children that we've always been doing, but also more about teacher resources, teacher tools, professional development for teachers, customer success method that we improve every year to make sure that implementation is successful, assessment, quizzes, all those other very crucial pillars that a curriculum solution relies on.
Great. Thank you. With working on teacher tools and the platform for teachers, how do you feel the teacher's experience has been using CodeMonkey, if they do have a background or don't?
So it was always actually the problem that we were solving and still are is how to enable quick scaling of computer science education despite the constant lack or shortage of computer science teachers in K-8 or even in K-12. And I don't expect that to change soon because if you have computer science skills, often you would choose like a computer science career in tech. I think that's the reason why it's always hard to find like computer science teachers with coding background. So our challenge was always to sort of bridge that gap and to create a curriculum solution that would not require coding background from the teachers. So we're sort of also teaching the teachers or helping the teacher, like allowing the teacher to learn with their students as they go along. So for being successful in teaching with CodeMonkey, you definitely don't need to have computer science background. The entire idea behind CodeMonkey was to create a curriculum that would not require coding background from the teachers.
Right. We have one of the attendees of this webinar. She wrote in the Q&A, but really, Paige Best Offroad, teachers I know love CodeMonkey. Most of us didn't know anything about coding before using. We're learning along with our students.
Yeah, and I think that's fun. I think it's an interesting, it's something that's changing now in the education world with the internet and all. Like children, they can learn things on their own on YouTube, and you know, teachers are no longer expected to become the source of knowledge. And it's more and more common to see classrooms and courses in school where teachers learn something new with their students. And I think this is actually, like, this is sometimes, I don't know, a better experience, or like, I think everybody's having more fun that way. Yeah, not just with computer science.
Right. No, that is interesting. Have just a couple more questions here. So if anyone of the attendees has any questions, please make sure you write them in the Q&A, and where Angie is also answering any of the more technical questions. So thank you very much, Angie. So You've been been at CodeMonkey for some time now, and there's the happy times and challenging times. I guess this is for everyone here, myself included. But how do you maintain the passion towards working at CodeMonkey towards the same goal after so long? Right, it's you've been in a almost decade-long marathon, and
Yeah.
not everyone has that ability. So what enables you to be able to continue the work that you're doing?
So I think what helps me, actually two things. One of them is, it goes back to my answer on your previous question, that I'm learning business. I'm learning business management. This is something I didn't have experience in, and it's an interesting challenge. And managing a company, managing teams, it's about, like working with people. It's by the way, has some similarities to working in education, I feel. Sometimes I feel like my employees are like my students in different ways. And I like that challenge, and I like becoming better in management, I guess. But on the computer science side, and what keeps this job interesting is that the market is still evolving rapidly. It's not like math or English that has been taught like for thousands of years. Computer science is still a new subject. It's still not a mandatory subject in most parts of the world. And to see how the market is maturing and computer science is being adopted in a more serious way gradually all over the world, it makes it more interesting, and it creates new challenges. I remember when we were beginning, we were not getting questions about, like, now we're getting like tougher questions from clients about like, what exactly do you teach in computer science? How exactly do you teach? How exactly do you assess learning outcomes? Like in the initial days, nobody cared. Like they were just doing, like, just give me some fun coding activity for my students for the hour of code week, and that's all I need. And now it's becoming the demand, the requirements are becoming more sophisticated. So it keeps things interesting.
So on that, where do you see coding in schools, coding in after schools? Like it's clearly being put into curriculum globally. Do you see coding ever becoming something like math or science or a language where it's a daily subject or something that's in the weekly schedule?
Yeah, that it's definitely, the trend is obvious. If you look, code.org, they post statistics on that. And if you look just as on the American education system as an example, and also it's probably one of the largest K-12 systems in the world, the trend is obvious. Like more schools are offering it, more students are taking it, more teachers are teaching it, more states are requiring schools to teach it, or to at least offer it as an elective. Yeah, so the trend is definitely there, and it's very steady.
So there obviously the coding is where we focus, and we moved into digital literacy to a certain extent. As coding grows, what do you feel is very important for young students to learn and for teachers to focus on in technology education as well? Coding is important for all the reasons, whether it's getting a job, understanding how technology works, all the things you mentioned. But we have people here where, well, what's important for the educators to focus on, and for the younger children and students and adolescents to learn about in terms of technology?
So actually, I'm very excited about the recent course we launched on digital citizenship, because parents and teachers nowadays, they tend to think like today's children were born with iPhones, so we think, and they can do anything on them, so we think They don't need to be taught how to use a computer, how to use the internet, because they just know it. But that is not true. So, they intuitively know how to post something on a social network or how to watch a video on YouTube and to comment. But the World Wide Web is a complicated platform. And it's also kind of risky, especially for children, not only for children, but there are so many things that you should watch out for. And in no way, I don't want to I encourage parents and teachers to let their children enjoy everything that they can from using the internet and computers, all the great educational content that they consume, and the positive social interaction, self-exploration, and a lot of great things that can be done on those devices and on the internet. But like I said, those things are now risk-free, and children nowadays, like adults, the fact that they know how to use the internet doesn't mean that they understand how it works. And if they don't understand how it works, they also probably are not aware of the risks. So I think, yeah, it's a good thing to focus on at a quite early stage. The things that we teach on the digital literacy course, how to be safe, how to use the internet safely for yourself, and also, not hurting others. Because it's a powerful tool, but like any powerful tool, it can be also create damage if you're not using it correctly for yourself and for other people.
Right. That's great to know. Yeah, we highly encourage all of you to try out our new digital literacy courses. Definitely give us any type of feedback. Angie is our customer success manager who gets all that feedback, and it helps us improve the courses. We have two more, one comment and then one more question. So I'll ask the question and then I'll then mention the comment. Is how does CodeMonkey contribute to learning STEM subjects?
So we just made sure, like when creating the CodeMonkey games, to include other STEM concepts in it, like distances, numbers, negative numbers, angles, degrees. In the more advanced courses, things like velocity, acceleration, gravity. So it's very easy to use coding and CodeMonkey as sort of a playground to practice those math and physics concepts and engineering. But even in the courses that don't deal with STEM concept directly, the actual challenge of coding is well known to be fostering other sort of 21st century skills, even if you're just coding, like, I don't know, like a small game that has nothing to do with STEM. The action of coding, the mental challenges involved with it are very helpful in developing skills that are useful for any other subject, and specifically STEM, like critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, things like that.
No, that's great, and I think that's something that we see more and more, and hopefully, as you mentioned, as this global market changes, that people will see coding not just as a subject unto itself that's important to learn, but how, whether it's the computational thinking or the math that you learn, or I know globally, like outside in certain non-English speaking countries, they'll use CodeMonkey in English so that they can practice their English. There's so many different ways that it impacts impacts other subject areas in their learning. And I just want to, take that and what you mentioned and said from Nicole, who I personally work with in the United States. She wrote, this isn't a question, it's a thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing how working with CodeMonkey impacts my students' outlook on coding related interest. This is my third year using CodeMonkey school-wide. Your programs allow us to grow and progress from block-based to text-based. It's a wonderful program. And so thank you very much, Nicole, for that. And I think it really ties into everything that Jonathan said. Jonathan, maybe you could give some closing remarks about CodeMonkey, about the Hour of Code. And then in the meantime, if anyone asks any more questions, otherwise we can then wrap up, and we'll send everyone. I put some links there. That's codemonkey.com. That will lead you to our page, our website, to see any of the information that you'd like. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial. If you sign up this week, we've changed the parameters of the trial where you can get unlimited students, so you can get your whole school on it. And then also, if you go on the second one, that's Hour of Code, those are the activities. You'll see CodeMonkey is one of the first activities on the Hour of Code page. This is out of many, many different programs. So that's just some of the back office. But yeah, maybe some closing remarks, Jonathan.
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's the Hour of Code week, and I happen to be wearing my Nike, what do you call that, sweatshirt? I remember Nike used to have this slogan, "Just do it." Do you remember that? Probably in the 90s.
Of course.
So yeah, I would just probably conclude that it's the Hour of Code week. Just do it. Just, choose one of the many different free Hour of Code activities. Book a time with your students in a classroom with computers or iPads or Chromebooks, and just do it. Just give them this first taste of coding and see where it takes your classroom.
Right. That's a great ending, Jonathan. Thank you so much for your time. People from all over the world, teachers and students alike, really thank you so much for joining this really fun and engaging webinar. Angie, thank you for the behind the scenes work. We'll send a follow-up email to everyone with some resources, some of the links which I sent. And as Jonathan said, just do it. Go on code.org, come on codemonkey.com, sign up for a free trial, and really benefit from one of the world's best primary or elementary through middle school computer science programs. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Nice to see everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Zach and Angie, and thanks everyone for attending.
Bye.